about typefaces should be done. It's always a lot of possibilities.
It's like a game.
Yes, it's like a game. Yeah, you have to find your way and then try to do it as systematic as possible. So it took me about 2 years, or in between. I didn't continue to work on it, and every now and then I started to work. But you see here sometimes there are diagonals in it, but yes, I think I'm on one hand a typical typographer, because I always work with type. And graphic design is a very wide field, and I only take a small part of that, and especially design where typography plays a more important role than images. But sometimes it's a combination. Yes. On the other hand, I also do a lot of exhibitions, yes. So three-dimensional work, and that for me is the tension between the two sides, the two-dimensional thing and the three-dimensional thing, that's what I like, to work from one in the other field. And that, in both sides, it influenced myself. For instance, I think that in general, I'm much more influenced by architecture than by graphic design in my work. I have a tendency to work quite constructive. I am always constructing type. I'm always working on grids and like you see the poster at the moment that's there on the wall, everything is construction on a fairly logical base of construction. What I did, for instance, was trying to see the work of the artist. That was in the period of the Van Abbe Museum. I looked at the work of the artist and I got a certain impression, and this impression I tried to translate typographically in the word of the, for instance, Léger. It's hanging upstairs, the poster of Léger. It was a period when Léger made these paintings with very heavy black lines around the images. And that influenced me to create a word Léger with very black heavy lines. But in my way, I did it, so it's a mixture of the influence of Léger in my work, but it's always a construction. And so I was always interested in constructing type on a logical way. And then in I think it was 1965, when I was on a large print exhibition in Germany, a print and paper exhibition, one of these large ones. And I went there with my father, who was a graphic artist, not a graphic artist, he was a block maker, and from the technical side. And I went with him to these exhibitions, and in '65 I went this one. And then I saw the first machine for digitizing typography, the first generation. It was a quite rough machine. Not that many pixels yet, and then I saw that they produced a Garamond in that period for the public, and I think it looked ugly. It had the flavor of Garamond, it was not the beautiful Garamond as we know, and then I thought, well, then I enlarged this 6-point Garamond by a magnifier glass, and I saw what happened in this digitizing. And I thought that the round shapes were always affected, because for 6-point you had a certain array of types, and for the 8-point or 10-point or 24-point, it was always a different outline, and that influences the idea of the type, what you see. Your eye is very sharp in that respect. And then I said, maybe we should think it the other way around and create a typeface that is suitable for that machine. Because we will surely go another 30 years with that machine, yeah, before they invent something else. So let's think another direction. And well, half of the people who heard about my idea said, well, it's crazy, you shouldn't follow the machine should follow us. I think, well, okay, but it will take another 20 years, 30 years before the machine can follow us. Let's try, and then I made a typeface with only straight lines. That was '67. And then I called it the new alphabet. And
you said also at that period, you make a lecture as the ATP, design tip for the computer age.
Yes.
That was the beginning of this
That was
approach.
It. That was it. Yes. It should be for the computer age started. You only read articles about computers. It was IBM, yeah, and IBM was my client. Yeah. I worked for IBM. Yeah. So I was happy that I always knew about the new developments. It was large machines, and I used pictures of such machines in the booklet I produced in that period on the new alphabet. And so I was very interested in these modern technical developments. Even in the same years, the people flew to the moon. That's why I used a photograph of that. It was all influenced my work. And then, so I designed my first specific typeface as a whole typeface, a compute alphabet. I decided to make an alphabet that is as wide as height, is in a square, so that it's not only in lining, but also from top to bottom it's lining, to make a very quiet impression. And a colleague of mine who worked with me in my office, Gerard Unger, who became a famous type designer afterwards, he was the first to react and said, well, thinking along your line, you also can make readable type. So he proposed a typeface, sketches of it, and produced also a booklet as a follow-up of my booklet. And that was the beginning. He developed as a type designer, and he became even a type designer for the company who produced these machines, Hell from Kiel. And then as a result of this typeface, I got a commission from Olivetti in Italy to do a typeface for an electric typewriter. And also Müller-Brockmann had a question from them to do also in the same time. So we both made an alphabet. For it is you can see it in a book of the development of Olivetti. It's included in that book, the both alphabets. And then when the alphabet, all the proofs were ready, and that was within the limitation of that electric typewriter. That are only 4 widths and very much limitations. That was for the daisy wheel typewriter. And IBM had the ball, and they had the daisy wheel. And when I finished this and the proofs were ready, they decided not to produce the typewriter anymore because the electronic typewriters came. And they had much more possibility. So I got my typeface back, and I used it 2 years later for a post stamp. I used the word for Netherlands and the numerals. And, but still, I only designed 1 grade of type, the whole alphabet. And then I forgot. And then at the end of the 90s, in 97, it must be about 97, the foundry asked me, couldn't we produce your original typeface, the new alphabet, digitally so that more people can use it? Because I found out in that time that a lot of English pop magazines used the typeface, but they always redraw it, and sometimes very badly, and sometimes more readable. They try to make it readable. But suddenly it appeared in pop magazines like Reagan and blah, 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 and these magazines. And I was highly interested to see what happened in that music scene. And that's why the foundry came to me and said, let's digitize it so they can use the proper alphabet. And then they asked me after that to look into my other alphabets, and the first was the Gridnik, and they called it the Gridnik in that time because my colleagues called me Gridnik in the 70s because of my work for the museum. They said, you are a Gridnik. And so when we had to decide on the name, we said, well, why not call it Gridnik? And then the alphabet of Klaas Oldenburg they digitized, and they digitized some typefaces that they only made 1 word for a poster, and we developed with them the whole alphabet. And for the Gridnik, they made the light version and the normal version and the bold version, and they have now a stencil version and the Fabriek, and so it developed. And I think we have now about 5 typefaces.